Welcome to Microsoft Build 2017. My name is Satish Thomas. I'm the Group Program Manager for Microsoft AppSource. And today we're going to go over Microsoft AppSource and more importantly, how you as a developer can build apps and leverage the opportunity of reaching 100+ million users that we have across the Microsoft ecosystem. So from an agenda perspective, I'm going to kick it off with what is Microsoft AppSource and how does it tie into the overall Microsoft Cloud opportunity for you as an ISV. And the second thing is, how can you build compelling trial experiences for your applications so that once you come on AppSource, you're able to get more users and hopefully better business outcomes as a result of it. And at that point, I'll have my colleague join and show you how to exactly build an application to meet the bar for AppSource and go live on AppSource. And then, of course, how you can get started today with all of this. At the highest level, from an ISV perspective, the opportunity that we enable through AppSource is your ability to get in front of 100+ million enterprise end users across Microsoft. So think about this as end users across Dynamics 365, Office 365, the Power Suite of services, Cortana Intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. And never have we been able to kind of bring those set of users in front of your applications contextually, and that's why this is super exciting for us as well. Just to put it all into context, what Microsoft AppSource enables is, of course, third-party partner applications that at a minimum enable AAD federated SSO, which is Azure Active Directory, and also AppSource has third-party add-ons for our first-party applications. What does that mean? If you have an add-in that works with Office 365, if you have a content pack that works with Power BI, or if you have an app that is built on top of Dynamics 365, AppSource becomes the destination for end users to discover, evaluate, or trial and provision, hopefully once they go through a successful evaluation phase. And then, of course, the more you use of our stack, the more hopefully you get more success out of it. We've got other things like ability to integrate with Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow, and then of course extend common data service so that you can have all your data in CDS so that customers and it can build custom applications to increase adoption within their organizations of your app. And then, of course, at the bottommost, you have Azure Platform, which is the infrastructure that you can also leverage to build your SaaS applications or to build intelligence into your applications. With that said, I want to quickly go over, what personas do we cater to at a high level. So at the forefront, we have a Microsoft enterprise end user. So like I mentioned earlier, there's end users for Office 365, there's end users for Dynamics 365, Power BI, etc. And of course, you've got users that come to AppSource. Our goal is to make sure that whatever their entry point is, we deliver contextual apps to them, apps built by you as an ISV, and hopefully you get more users and better business outcomes as a result of it. Of course, at the core, it's ISVs, which is we want you to build differentiated apps using our platform. And once you do that, we want you to come on board AppSource, and we want to get you in front of our millions of users so that you can become more successful in your business as well. And then finally, we have system integrators, which is, if I'm an end user that comes and discovers, evaluates, and hopefully wants to roll that out in my company, oftentimes we find that end users work with a systems integrator. So we've lit up the ability for SIs to also be on AppSource tied to a specific app. So that way we kind of get through the full quote-unquote buying motion or rollout motion for an app in typical companies. Okay. With that said, obviously, Microsoft AppSource being a distribution platform and a marketplace, we want to make sure that we have tons of users coming in so that all the apps that we have on AppSource are seeing a lot of success. At the same time, we want to make sure that when the end users come to AppSource, they have a lot of diversity of apps depending on whatever business process gap or business problem that they're trying to solve. So as of today, we're excited to announce that Office 365 apps are also on AppSource. So that makes AppSource a one-stop shop for business productivity plus business process applications and industry applications out there to solve your business problem. And of course, all these 2,300 apps span across Dynamics 365, Office 365, Power Suite, Cortana Intelligence, etc., etc. Okay, with that said, let's step into a demo. So here I am in AppSource, so you can access it yourself, appsource.com. It is super easy to use. And you'll notice that I'm already logged in here with my colleague's credentials. Essentially, it's AD enabled. So this is the key single thread that ties everything together across appsource.com, our first-party applications, and third-party applications that come onto AppSource. So that way an end user is able to very seamlessly discover, try, provision if they decide to go the full cycle of that. So here, as you can see on appsource.com, I can filter by role or category, I can refine by industry, I can refine by product, and find the application that I'm looking for. Also, another key thing that I'd like to call out is AppSource by itself is more than just appsource.com. So here I'm showing you the example of Dynamics 365, which is a first-party application by Microsoft. Assume I'm a marketing professional or a sales professional or an IT person. When I'm using Dynamics and I click Get Apps, essentially what you see here is Microsoft AppSource contextual to me. So we know which product you're using, we know what role you are, and what we're showing you is what we think is most applicable to you. So that's super powerful from an ISV perspective in terms of being able to get in front of all these users on appsource.com and all of our first-party applications as well. Similarly, for Office 365 users, when you click on the store icon, etc., in the waffle, you also land into AppSource contextual to Office 365, which we're excited to announce at Build today. Okay, so going back, let me actually show you how you can try an app very quickly. And again, you can try this at home. You can click on apps, you can search for it, or I can quickly browse through, you can see apps for web apps, sales apps, customer service apps, etc. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to just step in and I'll go to the apps tab. I can browse through all the applications that are available for the various applications or just the third-party applications. And purposes for this demo, I'm actually going to go and access a banking application, which is available on AppSource. You can see the description. I can look at everything that's there, videos and all that good stuff. And then let's assume I want to evaluate this. I basically agree to the terms of condition of the ISV and Microsoft. And within a few seconds, I actually land into the full-blown application in a trial mode. So think about this for a second. Within a few seconds, if you look at the corner, I'm already AAD authenticated. So that AAD authentication the token got transferred to the third-party app, and right now I'm all of a sudden in the application and I'm able to try what that application looks like. So in this case, it's a multi-tenant SaaS service that also has a D365, Dynamics 365 plugin, and also a Power BI dashboard as well. So we're able to quickly show the full value of that application to a business end user in a few seconds. And I can go in and click on these and exactly see what that experience looks like. Okay. So, and you can go through the CRM experience, you can go through the web experience, etc. So all of that is available to you right from AppSource, clicking into the application. And then I can go to AppSource and try more apps, but you get the idea. Okay, so going back this. So with that said, again, kind of recapping about the fact that AppSource is also discoverable from in-app experiences. That is super important because that's how we get you in front of those 100+ millions of enterprise users that we have as Microsoft. With that said, I want to quickly close with this in terms of how can you enable this for your app. So you might have seen a couple of experiences. What I showed you for VeryPark is what we call a customer-led trial, which is, within 5 seconds I was able to try it, and within 5 minutes I was able to use the app, hopefully. and see what value it can provide and hopefully get into next stage of evaluation. We also have this model called partner-led trial, which is in some cases, even though the application is a business SaaS application, it has AAD enabled, it might be a very different business model. So if it's a discrete manufacturing app that is catered at employees of companies with more than 10,000 employees, maybe a customer-led trial might not be the most optimal sales motion. So they can enable a partner-led trial where we send a lead, the ISV will qualify it, and then they'll provision it offline. Okay, so this again, obviously from a end user perspective, we're seeing a lot more usage for customer-led trials because it's immediate gratification, and that is something that we would like to dig deeper into and show how you can enable it for your apps. So with that, I'm going to hand off to my colleague Shafi to show you exactly how you can light that up for your application. Okay, take it away, Shafi.
Awesome. Thank you, Satish. So before I get started, so what I'm gonna cover right now here is basically in preview. So functionalities that we launch might change by the time we actually ship it. So what you see out here is basically the decision tree for an ISV like you or a partner like you, and how you can enable a test drive experience similar to the one that Satish just walked you through. So as you can see here, when you're working on your application to actually enable a one-click trial experience from AppSource, first and foremost, you need to enable AAD single sign-on, which is what actually makes the experience for a business end user very seamless, from the fact that they can find an application from one click, like Satish just showed earlier, the ability to get into the application, experience application. And if you are actually, once you enable AAD single sign-on, it goes into a mode around what kind of application are you trying to build. So the first one is it a fully SaaS app, or is it extensions to the Microsoft business applications? So as you can see here, if your application is actually a SaaS application, and if you deploy components into the customer subscription, then you do have an option to actually leverage the AppSource test drive framework that I'm going to talk about right now to actually enable your trial experience. Or let's say you do install add-ons into the customer's tenant, and also you actually have components that go into Azure. You can still leverage the AppSource test drive framework to enable a very seamless trial experience similar to the trial that you just saw earlier. So with that said, what I'm going to do here is I'm basically going to walk you through scenarios, these two scenarios we talked about. So scenario one is your apps are actually built on Azure. How are you going to enable a test drive for that? And the scenario two is, of course, if you have extensions that goes on the Microsoft Business Apps platform, how is that going to be enabled? A test drive experience going to be enabled. So let me just jump through and first of all just walk you through the steps, and then I'll basically just quickly walk through what needs to happen from your side to enable a test drive experience. So as you can see here, of course, you need to build your application. Once you build your application, you need to enable AAD single sign-on. And once that's done, since this is a test drive instance where a business user is going to land, you do need to think about what's going to be your wow scenario that you want to enable for the end user to experience. And once the wow scenario is identified, you need to identify the data sets that actually will power this wow scenario. Once that's done, since this is a Azure-based app, you package all your application assets into using ARM technology. You create an ARM template, and of course we do understand that not every deployment or not all deployments can be achieved using ARM, because there's always custom scripts or custom configuration that needs to happen, which needs to, let's say, make some configuration changes into your SaaS application that's running somewhere, or it needs to actually write some settings somewhere. So we do have the option where you can actually specify these custom post-deployment configurations. So these configurations will be set up. The ARM instance will get deployed. These configurations will be run when a business end user comes to AppSource and requests for a test drive or a trial of your application. And what we also need is, of course, when a user comes and says that, hey, we need to do a test drive, we also need to make available the subscription into which these instances are going to be deployed for test drive. And finally, finally, you actually evaluate your trial, make sure it all works end to end. You test it. You bundle all of this together, which includes your ARM template, your AAD application that actually has access to the subscription in which you want these apps to run, the customer emails that Microsoft will send out when a customer takes these test drives, and any other metadata that makes up your app profile that actually shows up in AppSource. So you bundle all of that, you send that to Microsoft, you publish that through our publishing mechanism, which I'm just going to walk through, and finally you are out there in AppSource, customers take it for a test drive, we share insights from AppSource, you use the insights, the reviews, the feedback you get, and you actually improve your application. So with that said, I'm actually going to just jump through a few of these and show you how you can actually put an application like this together and how you can actually make all this work. So let me just quickly switch to Visual Studio here. So what I have here is an ARM template for an application that is comprised of two things. One, it's as simple as a website with, let's say, a database that actually powers the websites. So first things first, when you actually bundle the application, similar to what I talked about earlier, this application needs to be spun up with some demo scenarios, which needs a demo data. So it needs to know where the database location is. You also give us things like what's your admin creds, what's your password, the server name in which you want the database to be. And one quick thing that I want to call about here is what you also need to do is when you define these names or these variables here, when a customer comes in and tries a test drive, every instance needs to get a unique name because that's how if you have a website which is powered, which is using a SQL database behind the scene, we need to make sure these instances get unique names so that these individual test drive instances can be uniquely addressed and can be uniquely provided to the end user. So as you can see here, you specify these variables which basically make sure that these instances are unique. And let me just keep scrolling down here. So what you also have here is a few other resource information like the connection, string details, the various settings and configurations you want the instances to be. And what I actually want to talk about here briefly, which is of very interest to me, is what you see here, which is the last set. So this is primarily where things like post-deployment configurations happen. So as I mentioned earlier, not every deployment can be done end-to-end using an ARM template. There's always this post-deployment configuration that needs to happen. So this is where you actually specify the post-deployment callback URL. So this can be an endpoint that either we can call, which can host your custom orchestration logic, or this can even be an Azure function, which you can actually use to do things like let's say if you enable AAD single sign-on and you want to do some configuration somewhere, this is a function that you can actually use to enable the experience from AppSource. And of course, there are a few AppSource specific strings as well, which is used by AppSource to enable experiences within AppSource. So once you have your application which is ready to go, and you actually have an ARM template similar to the one that you see out here, the next step is of course having your package ready, which is basically the source code or the code behind the website that actually runs the application. So as you can see here, you create an MS deploy package, and the package is also specified in an ARM template. So the ARM template basically knows that this is where my website code is, which I need to be deployed, which needs to be deployed with the database backup file, and all of this gets bundled and is provided to AppSource. So, and how you do that is what I'm going to walk you through next. So that experience is what we actually refer in our world as the publishing portal. So as you can see here, this is a publishing portal, and you are enabling the test drive. So you have a set of configurations which is available to you, which basically drives what your test drive experience is or what your test drive experience will be. So for instance, since when an end user comes in and says, hey, I want to enable a test drive, since these are resources that's running in Azure, we give you an option to actually say how many hours do you want the test drive to be. So you can actually say, hey, my test drive, it makes sense for a user to try it for 3 hours. So what this means is AppSource will make sure that your test drive instance is actually stood up when a user comes in, the user assigned to the instance, and it's kept active for 3 hours. And at the end of 3 hours, we basically tear that instance down. So there are a few other additional configurations as you can see here, which is basically the number of hot instances. because we do want to make sure that the customers do get a very seamless and easy experience with respect to the trials. So what that means is, in this specific configuration you see here, I have said that I want to have a, looks like I just got logged out here, so I'm just going to log back in. So what I actually have there is basically my various configurations. So let me just scroll down to the configuration section again. And as you can see here, the number of configurations or number of hot instances is 5. So I'm going to always have 5 of these instances running. So the first 5 concurrent users who come in will always get a very quick, snappy trial experience. They click on the trial button. These hot instances are already running in the cloud. One of these instances from the available pool of instances is picked up and assigned to the user. But let's say you don't want to have that many hot instances running. You can always say the maximum number of concurrent instances is 10. So what that means is from the 6th user to the 10th user, we're going to actually deploy the instance on the fly. And we do understand that when you deploy instances on the fly, this can take some time. So AppSource does have email notification and user communication enabled. So when the test drive is available for the user, we do not notify the user saying, hey, your test drive is available with some additional metadata that you as an ISV can provide, which basically talks about what are the walkthrough, what are the different test drive options, and what can you experience as part of the test drive and all of that. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more here because I do want to talk about a few things. So as you can see here, of course, these test drives are running in your subscription. So you do have to give us things like what's your subscription ID, what's going to be the access key that we can use to actually run these test drives in a subscription. And of course, you need to provide us the ARM template, which I just created in the last step. So all of these gets bundled by you, is provided by you to Microsoft. It goes through a quick publish process. So this is where you get to actually quickly go through, publish the app, what we call in our world as staging. So you actually do stage your app. You can test it end to end, make sure things work. And once everything looks good, you test it, you validate it, it's all looking good. You basically request approval to push to prod. This is where Microsoft will work closely with you. We review your app, make sure it all looks good, and we finally ship your app to production, and your app lights up in AppSource, similar to the hundreds of apps that Satish just walked you through earlier. So with that said, I want to quickly switch through few more scenarios. So I did cover through these as part of the demo. So I'm just going to skip that and go through how do you do the same if it's not just ARM, right? Because right now what we talked about is if you have an app that's actually running on Azure, but we do understand that business application might not always work in silos because it might have integrations into D365 or it might have integrations into, let's say, Office 365 or any other resources. So I'm going to walk you through how can you leverage the same test drive framework to actually enable experience similar to the one that I just talked about. So similar to the 10 steps you had in the last scenario, you do have 14 steps in this case. So most of the steps remain the same, apart from the fact that the few delta is what I want to call about here, which is basically since let's take the case of a scenario where your application actually has Dynamics 365. So in that case, what basically happens is you also package, you build your application, you actually build your application with the Dynamics 365 extension, you package your Dynamics 365 extension, you keep that ready. Once that's done, what you do is you deploy or you make these test drive D365 instances ready. So those are basically the instances that we will use for enabling these test drive experiences. Again, you don't want to land a user into a D365 instance without the whole railed experience on what the user can see. So that's where defining these custom roles and come handy. So you do define the custom roles that you want to land the user into. And of course, to enable the test drive experience, you need to have the licenses available for D365. And few of the other things remain the same with respect to the fact that you need to have an Azure subscription that we can use. You need to have an app that can be used for assigning resources, for managing the resources and all of that. So once that is done, similar to how you used to use an ARM template, which actually specifies what the orchestration needs to be, in this case, what you actually use is a logic app. So we, in AppSource, as part of the test drive management framework, we give you option to actually create and provide us these logic apps. So you can provide us with the provisioning logic app that you want us to run during the provisioning step. You can provide us with the logic app for user assignment that we actually run as part of the user assignment step. And finally, you give us logic app that we can actually run as part of the deprovision step. So these logic app and all other associated assets gets bundled and you provide to Microsoft, similar to what you just saw earlier. And we basically go through the process. To just quickly show you guys how this is done, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch back to my demo screen here. So if you are familiar with logic apps, you can go to the portal. You can start creating these logic apps similar to the one you see here. So as you can see here, this is an assigned logic app that I have created before the session. So what this does is, once a user comes through AppSource and says, hey, I want to do a test drive, it basically takes a request of a user to test drive. It basically validates a user to make sure that the user has write permission or any other additional checks that needs to happen. And finally, it has the function or the steps or the operation to actually add the user into D365. So as you can imagine, a user who's coming into AppSource to take a test drive might not have a D365 subscription. He or she might be a user who's interested in your application, but might not have signed up for D365 or might not have access to any other services that's out there. So this step basically makes sure that the user is added to the D365, the user is given the right permission, the user is assigned the right role that you defined as part of your whole app experience, and the user basically lands into that app that you configure with us. So similar to the assign logic app, what you can also give us is a provision logic app. So as you can see here, this is a little bit more complex than the assign logic app. This is primarily because in this specific step, we are actually trying to deploy Azure resources. We are trying to create the resource group. We are trying to use a template for that. We are doing a lot of steps with respect to what the deployment needs to be. But all of this is encapsulated in this logic app, and it's actually abstracted from the end user. So from a business user who's coming to AppSource and taking a test drive, they don't see any of this. But you as an ISV can actually put all these awesome experiences together, which can actually tie these various applications from the Microsoft suites together to enable this fantastic test drive experience through AppSource, so that AppSource knows every time when an end user comes in and says, I want to test drive this app, it actually becomes part of the AppSource engine itself. So AppSource becomes responsible to actually assign provision the instance, assign the user. When the test drive is done after X number of hours that you configure in the portal that I showed you earlier, AppSource becomes responsible to actually tear these instances down. So hence, as you see here, AppSource is helping you as an ISV to not just put your apps out there in front of the millions of users that's out there on the Microsoft Cloud. AppSource is also giving you a quick, snappy framework, which is what we call the test drive framework on our side, to actually enable first-class trial experiences through AppSource, which you can use to showcase your wow scenarios to your prospective customers. With that said, I would like to hand over to Satish.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Shafi. So with that, we want to really leave you with a few crisp steps on how you, as an ISV, as a developer at an ISV, can make this real for your application. So what we showed you is a lot of code and work that is already live today, and some of it in preview. But this is something that you can start doing today. So once you've built your app, integrate AD, federate SSO, and used 1 to n number of components within our stack, let's say you're ready to list your application on AppSource, onboard your application onto AppSource. All you need to do is come to appsource.com, click on the list an app link on the top. You tell us about your app, and that's all it takes. Within 24 hours, somebody from my team will reach out and guide you through what it would take. So we've made it super simple, and hopefully we see a lot of you coming in and sharing your app and getting them live on AppSource soon. And then more importantly, it's not just about getting your app on AppSource. We want to make sure that you're super successful. And as part of that, we want to make sure that all the work that you saw in terms of enabling test drive experiences and compelling trial experiences are a key part of it. So if you're interested to learn more about what you saw in terms of enabling test drives, you can basically go click on this link, complete the survey, and we will get back to you and kind of guide you through it. But we're super excited, in terms of the all-up ISV opportunity. For the first time ever, we're able to get you in front of all of these 100 million users, and we look forward to kind of hearing from you, and more importantly, getting a lot of your apps live on AppSource soon. Cool. Thank you.